I would like to introduce to the stage the amazing, the wonderful, my very, very good friend, Sir Chris Bryant.
Right, I think I'm going to do this sort of down here because that'll embarrass everybody into eating quietly. Yes, sorry, I mean you, sir, just here. Look, I just need to say, first of all, so my name's Chris Bryant. I'm a Labour MP. I'm the Minister for this, that and the other. And I just need to say, so I'm slightly homosexual. You're really not meant to laugh at that? In fact, I'm actually completely homosexual. I was just breaking it to you gently. In fact, I'm a practicing homosexual, and one day I'll be quite good at it. Or at least so my husband hopes. I say all of this not because you need to know whilst you're eating all about my sexual proclivities, but more because I will be referring to my husband later. So I didn't want you to think that I was like the Queen. Well, like the Queen. No, she's not very well now. Anyway, so look, my basic point is that melanoma is a bugger. It's very, very inconvenient as well. Is my basic point of what I'm... This all started for me in December 2018 when my husband looked at the back of my head. I just had my hair cut very short for Christmas, and my husband looked at the back of my head and said, "What's that?" And I said, "Well, funny enough, I can't see it." He took a photo of it, and there was a kind of little kind of bumpy, moly thing where you can see where the hole is now. And I didn't think any more about it. You know, we had Christmas, blah, blah, blah. And then my birthday, which is January the 11th, I look forward to 300 birthday cards next year. My birthday on January the 11th, I thought, you know what, I better go to the doctor just to have it checked out, you know. So I went to the doctor, and the doctor said, "Well, I think it's probably a wart, but I'm going to send you to the emergency cancer department," which made me think that he didn't think that it was a wart at all. And 2 weeks later, I went to dermatology, and she said, "Oh, my Lord. Yes, I don't like that very much. We'll cut that out next week." So they cut it out the following week, and it's quite difficult on the back of your head. There is an advantage when they cut things out on the back of your head because there's not much spare skin. So they have to do a little bit of a tuck. Facelift, exactly. Thank you very much. Do carry on eating, sir. So they did all of that, and weirdly, they had decided, because they knew who I was, because I was the local MP, they decided that I would like to listen to Erasure all afternoon. So I had an awful lot of little respect, and the lovers that you sent for me didn't come with any satisfaction guaranteed, so I'll return them to the sender with a note attached for me, "I love to hate you." So there's me lying and then knitting away at the back of my head. That all happened, and then they said, "Right, well, obviously we'll send it off." And I said, "So what do you think, doctor?" And she said, "Well..." I thought, "Oh, well, that's not a very good well." But I went back to work and had a great big thing on the back of my head, which was all a bit entertaining in Parliament. Everybody's going, what on earth is going on with you? And then and there was a nurse, actually, a former dermatology nurse who was an MP at the time. And I was sort of telling her all about this. And then I got a text message saying, "Actually, Mr. Bryant, we'd like you to come in quite urgently. We've got your results. Could you come in tomorrow?" And I apologise for my friend's language. I told her, and she said, "Fuck, that's bad news." "Oh, great. So you're nursing sort of way of approaching people. Obviously, you've given up on that and you've just become an MP." And then, so I then took my husband's best advice I was ever given: if you're going to go in for results, go with another human being. And take note or record. We actually recorded. It was really, really useful because we couldn't think through all of this. And I thought, oh, so we're at the end of the day, so maybe it's going to be fine. She's just, filling in the day. But then we went in, and she was sitting formally behind a desk rather than to one side, and I thought, all right, this is really bad news. And she said, right, so it's a 3B, or was it 3C? I can't remember. Mark. Was it 3B or 3C? Anyway, whatever. It's a 3 something or other, which is bad news. And she looked very, very worried. And I sort of grabbed the table and started crying. And I can't ever tell that story without this happening again. So it was one of the worst days of my life, obviously. It was made slightly more entertaining by the fact that my husband was there. So, for instance, when they then did a kind of whole check all over my body to see whether there was anything else, and then they ask you questions like, do you smoke? Have you ever smoked? Are you sure you've never smoked? Yes, honestly, I've never smoked. Alcohol? Yes. How much? A parliamentary amount? To which my husband goes, far too much. And I said, well, not as much as you, mate. But anyway, and then 2 weeks later, they did a bigger excision around the back of my head, and that turned out to be BRAF positive. I know this is language that everybody else in the room will know. And so I then had pills for a year. And I'm sure there are people in here who've had targeted therapy as well. And that was all dandy. And then I had... and I had all the surgery was done in Wales, but the difficulty, yes, where I'm the MP for the Rhondda, but the difficulty was that Parliament sits Monday to Friday, and I didn't want to have to take a whole day off to do another day of whatever, so I tried to find a doctor in London who did dermatology and would be able to look after me, and I came across Dr. Mark Harries. So then he became my doctor, whether he wanted it or not. And funnily enough, then about 2 weeks later, I was in Parliament, and I bumped into a chap. I used to be a priest in the Church of England, and I bumped into the former Bishop of Oxford. And I said, oh, Richard, hello, how are you? And he said, well, I'm absolutely fine, apart from the fact that I've just had a 6-inch tumour taken out of my brain. And he said, how are you? I said, well, I'm absolutely fine, apart from the fact, look at the back of my head. I've had a melanoma taken out of the back of my head. And he said, oh, that's interesting. Who's your oncologist? And he said, and I said, Mark Harris. And he said, that's funny, he's my son. So the man who ordained me when he was as a bishop, ordained me as a priest, was the father of Dr. Mark Harris over there. So I felt as if I was in very good hands, and that all went kind of swimmingly. And then there were PET-CT scans and MRI scans, PET-CT scans and MRI scans, PET-CT scans and MRI scans. I learned how to fit a cannula on myself. And no, that's not true. I haven't learned how to do that. I still can't look at it when it goes in. Can anybody else look at it when it goes in? It's just, anyway. But I'm fine with, I'm a bit upset that PET-CT scanners have got faster, because I used to have a nice half-hour sleep in there. Whereas now they're only 8 minutes, and you're in and out, and they're going, excuse me, we need this for somebody else. So that was all fine, and we did that for 5 years, and then I went for what was going to be my last PET-CT scan on the 4th of January last year, 2024. I'd just been told a Tory MP had resigned in Kingswood, just outside Bristol, and I'd been asked by Keir Starmer to run the Labour Party campaign. So I was in the campaign office on my birthday, the 11th of January. My birthday's not good for this kind of stuff, when I had a phone call to say, I'm really sorry to say that this scan isn't clear, and you have something in your lung, in your right lung, which looks like it's probably a melanoma, and so we want to get you into surgery as soon as possible. So obviously I didn't want to tell everybody in the Labour Party, because I had a by-election to run, and there are things that matter. And so we did it on the Saturday. They cut it out. It's amazing that you can sort of conk somebody out, make their lung not work, poke around inside it, and then cut something out and have a look at it. I mean, all with, laparoscopically and so on. So that was kind of 4 holes here to take that out. And then we decided to start on my process of immunotherapy. I'm sure there are lots of people who've done this as well. So combination immunotherapy first. 2 long bouts sitting there, more cannulas, more blood tests, all of that, what I call cancer admin. And unfortunately, I don't know whether I've got a very delicate body or something, but it just didn't like all of this going on. So I had quite bad tummy issues. This was particularly problematic because on the, I think it was, what was the date? I've got it written down here. It was, on the 22nd of April last year, I was in A&E because my tummy was really, really bad. And I'd had, I can't remember how many bad bouts, and that meant that I was a stage 3, but not quite a stage 4 and all that kind of stuff. And the thing is, I went in there at 7:30 in the morning because I was feeling bad, and I listened to the Today programme, and they just cancelled Jeremy Hunt coming on. And I thought, I think something's afoot. I think the general election will be called today. So now, everything in the NHS is wonderful, but everything in the NHS takes a long time. So I'm sitting there with my mobile phone, basically getting messages saying, get yourself to Parliament because the Prime Minister is about to call the general election. And then the doctor comes in and says, well, Mr. Bryant, we've got to... And I'm going, yes, but the general election's being called. Yes, but the general election's being called? You've got to stay in for 2 days. No, I'm not staying in for 2 days. You can put something in my arm if you want. I'm happy to carry it around if you want, but I've got to go and organise an election campaign. So that's the other day when it was really, really inconvenient. But it was more inconvenient for Rishi Sunak in the end because it went worse for him, really. Then I had a little bit of steroids for a while. I thought if I was on steroids, I'd suddenly buff up. It doesn't work like that, does it? It really doesn't work like that. They're the wrong kind of steroids, I think. Then once I'd kind of got over my tummy problems, that involved a couple of endoscopies as well. Then we had single immunotherapy. So I'd had Nivo and Ipi, and then I went over to just Nivo. I think that's the right way around. I can never remember. And that was fine. I had 2 rounds. I wasn't able to finish the combination therapy because my tummy had been too bad. But they started me on the single immunotherapy. So then I did 2 rounds of that, and then I thought, well, frankly, we've won the general election. I'm now a minister. I can go on holiday for a few weeks. So my husband and I went to Spain, a little village called Begor in Catalonia, which we know very well, and we just kind of chilled out. And unfortunately, on the 2nd of August, I was in phenomenal pain in my stomach. And I woke Jared up at 2 o'clock in the morning and I said, I'm sorry, I'm taking myself to A&E here in Spain. And I went to A&E in Spain. The doctor was really handsome. I mean, absolutely stunning. His name's Paco. That's all I can remember. Anyway, it turned out that I had pancreatitis. And they all went, no, you're British, it'll be alcohol. And I'm saying, well, it might be the immunotherapy. I'm using Dr. Google, which nobody should ever use. But honestly, it does say that very occasionally. No. Anyway, they looked after me for a night and then chucked me out the next afternoon. I rang back to the team in the UK, and it didn't seem to get better, and so I flew back to the UK from the holiday, had a couple of days here in the UK being tested for this, that, and the other, and they put me on steroids. Yay! Now, again, I didn't get all beefed up, and actually, I was on steroids for quite a long time, best part of 6 months, and then when we tried to take me off steroids, that didn't really work. The pancreatitis came back. I know all about amylase and lipase and virtually every blood test under the sun nowadays. So then we had to do mycophenolate and then wean me off that, and we finished that 2 weeks ago. Hurrah! However, there are downsides to I never know how to say it, steroids. And the worst bit about it for me is gum disease. I hadn't even thought about gum disease, which is why I've got to leave fairly swiftly tonight, I'm afraid, because I've got a big round at the dentist tomorrow morning to sort out my gum disease, which is because of the steroids. And in the meantime, incidentally, obviously I've had some more endoscopies, just because that's entertaining. And we took my gallbladder out. Yes. Hey! Turns out you don't need one. Bit like Rishi Sunak. Oh, sorry. No, sorry. No, I told myself not to say anything like that. I've had a moment when we thought I might have diabetes. Again, probably brought on by the steroids. So that's been my little career. Oh, and I've got a weird thing with my legs now. I don't know what that is, which is why I turned up late, because I was in the clinic this afternoon, and last Friday I was in the clinic in South Wales being checked for DVT and all that kind of stuff. So I've now had basically every doctor in Britain take some kind of image of me or other, and at some point it'll all go into the AI thing, and somebody will be able to work out what's wrong with me or what's right with me. So what have I learnt in all of this process? Number one is that cancer admin just has to be done. It's just a fact of life, and there's no point getting fretful about it. I don't get fretful about scans because I just and scan results, because I just think they're a fact. And other people do, I know, and some people get especially fretful if they can't get their scan. I understand that. I think that's what the lady over there is saying, because she said to me earlier, in Oxford. Yes, I know. But cancer admin is just a part of the business, and I think every stride that the NHS can make to make that cancer admin just simpler and easier and less fretful is really, really helpful. Because the fretfulness about, and for the most part, we don't want to be a pain as a patient. We don't want to get any kind of treatment that anybody else isn't getting or anything like that. We know that there's a process and all the rest of it, but just when it's simple, when things happen on time, it's just such a delight. The second thing I've learned is that the most important person in the NHS system is the receptionist. And the person who organises the appointments, though in some places now a lot of that is done, more easily. I think the NHS could find a system of having a telephone number that could be answered. I do like the new scanners, and it is amazing, when you think back 15, 20 years, there wouldn't have been all this tomography and all the imaging that happens today, which is so dramatic. I think somebody needs to invent something better than steroids. Surely we've had steroids for a long time now, and there must surely be another means of trying to calm down reactions after immunotherapy. I was really, a few months ago, as a minister, I had a phone call and I was asked to go to Downing Street to meet the husband and wife team who set up BioNTech, who are the people who are working on the melanoma vaccine, and they've worked on immunotherapy and loads of other things before. They're just about the most delightful and humble people I've ever met. But this is my final point, really, which is that I'm so glad that I've had this in this generation. Because if I'd had it 20, 30 years ago, I'd have been gone by now, if you see what I mean. And I remember sitting next to a dermatologist a couple of years ago, at a dinner in London, and I said, what's your, and she was about to retire, and I said, what's your career been like? And she said, well, it's been absolutely amazing, but for roughly 35 years of my career, I basically, when I had a melanoma patient, I was sort of helping them know how to die. And that's not what people do in that career today. And we can even talk about a cure. So I just feel myself to be so phenomenally lucky. I'm lucky that I had a husband that looked at the back of my head and said, hang on, what's that? I'm lucky that my GP sent me off quickly and that we had a cancer pathway system. I'm lucky that we have an NHS, and that it would never have been a question of whether I had money to pay for immunotherapy or targeted therapy or whatever. I'm really, really fortunate that I live in a country where the different bits of the NHS do their level best to work together. So for me, starting in Wales and then managing to transfer down to London, I thought that was really useful and fortunate. But above all, I'm just phenomenally fortunate that I can live. I can live. And that's happened because a lot of people have been phenomenally dedicated to this cause. When skin cancer wasn't really, a popular discipline, there were dermatologists, people who decided to train to be dermatologists. God knows we need more dermatologists in the UK. But also people who train to be histopathologists. God knows we need more histopathologists in the UK, and it's a shame that sometimes results are taking a very long time to come back. It's absolutely... and it's also because people decided to be scientists and work in this field and put money into this field and invest and come up with solutions to some of the most difficult. And I went to see Richard II at, because I'm the arts minister, I have to go to the theatre all the time, darling. It's a very hard life. There's one of the big scenes in Richard II, this was Jonathan Bailey playing the lead, and yes, he's, we were, all right. Some of you don't know who he is, and the rest of you fancy him. So we went, and what is clever about what they've done about the production is one of the big scenes in the play is when Richard does a speech about, for God's sake, let us sit upon the ground and tell sad stories of the death of kings, how some have been deposed, some slain in war, and so on. And it's all being very melodramatic, blah, 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 blah. And then he has a final line in that speech, which I won't remember perfectly, but it says something like, and then comes, was somebody else going to remember it? It comes with a narrow pin and pierces through his crown and farewell king. And because was here, that's what it feels like. That melanoma is such a tiny thing in a way, or it can be. I mean, many people obviously have much bigger ones, but mine was such a small thing on the back of the head. It feels to me that it could have been farewell king, and it hasn't been yet. But melanoma is still a bugger. Thank you very much for listening.